Hi, I'm Barb Nederpel, President of the Hospital Employees Union. I'm joining you today from the unceded and ancestral territories of the Coast Salish people, including lands belonging to the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. I regret that I am unable to join the others in my hometown of Kamloops at Moccasin Square Gardens due to the recent severe weather events, but I am honored to participate in this important memorial and call to action against gender-based violence organized by the Kamloops Indian Band and the Kamloops District Labour Council. It's been more than 3 decades since the horror of the December 6 massacre at L'École Polytechnique. And in the decades since, we've learned more about gender-based violence. We understand how gender identity and sexual orientation, race and disability, age and religion, and other intersectional identities mean added risk and other forms of discrimination. We understand how a crisis can exacerbate the risks and impacts. And when the pandemic hit, we were told to shelter at home to keep ourselves and others safe. But for so many women, girls, and gender diverse individuals who already were experiencing or at high risk of gender-based violence and intimate partner violence, being isolated at home was no shelter at all. And the economic stress traps those experiencing violence, preventing them from finding a way out. In BC, this crisis grows worse with the stress and dislocation of families and communities from the recent floods and this past summer wildfires. Shelters and other services women and families depend on for support and safety have been stretched to the limit over the last 22 months, and they've had to pivot quickly to provide services in very difficult conditions. In July, the Canadian Femicide Observatory for Justice and Accountability reported a shadow pandemic that was raging across the country with 92 women and girls killed in the first half of the year, mostly by men. Indigenous women were vastly overrepresented amongst these lost sisters. We need to honor and remember every one of them, and the best thing that we can do is to recommit to taking action. More than 80% of the members in my union, the HEU, identify as women. So statistically and anecdotally, we know that they too face violence at home, and it follows them to work and puts their economic security at risk, and it endangers other workers. That's why it's so important that unions like HEU are negotiating sexual and domestic leave provisions in their collective agreements, and that they provide education and training to stewards so that they can support members that are at risk of gender-based violence. We also need to do more to make sure that our union spaces are safe spaces for women and gender diverse members. As unions, we must call out toxic masculinity, gender-based harassment and violence in our own organizations, whenever and wherever we encounter it. And we need to ensure that education and awareness programs are provided at all levels of our unions. We need to create trauma-informed policies that are accessible and adequately address the issues, holding people to account for their actions and their inactions. Last week, the BC government announced that they will develop a comprehensive multi-year action plan to address gender-based violence. And of course, I'm so proud of my Labour Council for honoring the work done by Lynn Chassie and her family to remember her mother and other murdered women and girls in our community. And I raise my hands to the Kamloops Indian Band for working with local unions to help us understand and act on the epidemic of violence experienced by Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirited people. This is important work, and we must stay engaged and continue to push for legislation, for programs, policies that support victims and address the underlying causes of gender-based violence. But our collaboration here in Kamloops gives me so much hope that we're on the path to a world free of violence against women and girls. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on the occasion of the December 6th and the Kamloops Red Dress and the Shoe Memorial.